Have you ever noticed how a woman's choice to remain single can evoke subtle discomfort or even judgment from those around her? Perhaps you've heard the unspoken questions. But why hasn't she married? Doesn't she miss companionship? It feels as if society expects a man and a partner to complete her story. But what if that assumption misses something profound? Today, we're exploring the powerful emotional journey of women who choose solitude not because they're lonely, unavailable, or too picky, but because they've learned something fiercely true. Their worth, their peace, and their power do not depend on another person. The world is quick to label these women as bitter, cold, or afraid of commitment. But I'm here to challenge that narrative. Because when a woman walks alone, she's not surrendering. It's often the most courageous path of all. She has been through heartbreak, loss, disappointment. She's seen the mask of love slip away into violence, indifference, or control. She's learned the hard way that not all love is freedom, and that sometimes love demands the soul to shrink. So she chose herself. What you're about to hear isn't just motivational fluff. It's a raw look into emotional evolution, a journey of grief, healing, cusp of transformation, clarity. This isn't about hating love, it's about honoring herself. Over the next few minutes, you'll hear 8 deep reasons why some women choose to stay single, not out of fear, but out of fierce self-preservation and emergence into wholeness. If you're ready to step into empathy, if you're ready to see solitude not as emptiness but as sanctuary, then you're in the right place. Reason number 1, healing from emotional scars. Many women we admire left relationships not because they stopped believing in love, but because they began to recognize signs of their own erasure. They've loved deeply, only to be met with neglect, manipulation, or control. Take Aisha. She spent years pouring herself into relationships, caregiving, sacrificing, pleasing, only to realize she'd lost sight of herself. She felt emotionally invisible. In one pivotal moment, after a partner dismissed her dreams and hopes with a simple shrug, the weight of her erased self snapped. "I can't do this anymore." She left, not out of pride, but out of survival. For her, single life wasn't a punishment, it was a breath of fresh air. She started rediscovering herself through books, music, and travel. Tears spilled freely, not from loneliness, but from the release of self-denial. She was no longer offloading energy into broken systems. She was reclaiming it for herself. This internal healing doesn't happen overnight or always gracefully. Part of her journey involved therapy, journaling, and painful realizations. But that pain, once untended, had bloomed within her. By choosing to be alone, she chose to let grief live and die in its own time. Her decision was unorthodox in many families. Single women are often seen as unfinished projects. Yet this is precisely what makes their journey powerful. In standing alone, they remind us that self-trust trumps societal scripts. Reason number 2. Redefining self-worth outside a relationship. Nearly every culture still frames marriage as the ultimate marker of value. So a woman who rejects that path faces silent questions, doubts, and sideways glances. But here's the truth. Self-worth isn't given, it's built. And nothing builds it faster than honoring your own boundaries. Even when the world tells you to break them. Take Silly 38 comes from a background where being single is frowned upon. "You're a beautiful woman," relatives said. "But what's the point if you're not married by now?" Each comment chipped away at her confidence, until she forced herself to stop justifying. She began writing affirmations every morning. "I'm enough. My worth isn't measured by my relationship status." She practiced saying no to blind dates, romantic setups, and late-night texts from ex. She was done apologizing for being single. Over time, a remarkable transformation happened. People noticed her calm glow, less needy, more present. She enrolled in a pottery class, made meaningful friendships, and started volunteering. Her identity settled into solid ground, one that wasn't shaken by someone else's absence. These women show us that confidence is forged, not inherited. Their singlehood isn't emptiness. It's an intentional space they carved to reclaim value and rebuild themselves on their terms. Reason number 3. Choosing emotional autonomy over attachments. One of the bravest acts of self-love is choosing emotional independence over unhealthy attachment, and that often means choosing to stay single. In relationships built on codependency, hearts lose their boundaries. Partners may love, but not always support. They give, but lose themselves in the process. Women who have been through this trauma often step back, not from rejection of love, but from fear of subsuming their identity. Sarah, 45, left marriage after realizing that the more she loved, the more she disappeared. Her boundaries were gone. Her dreams were dusty. Even her laughter didn't feel like hers. She didn't trade one set of emotions for another. She traded dependence for connection with herself. She began saying no, not to love itself, but to love that devours. She chose the difficulty of being alone over the ease of being someone's secondary priority. Her tears weren't sorrow, they were sunrise. She cried when she first spent a night alone, without makeup, without a dinner plan, just her. But those tears opened her eyes. She smelled the coffee the next morning differently. She felt the breath of her own skin again. For her, emotional autonomy became more meaningful than romantic signals. She discovered warmth in stillness and beauty in boundary. Reason number 4. Embracing singlehood as spiritual work. The silent ones, the lonely ones, often hide a truth. Singlehood can be a spiritual journey. Mona, 55, describes it as a pilgrimage. After divorce, she discovered meditation. She started waking at 5 a.m., lighting candles, reading spiritual texts, and sitting quietly with herself. Tears came often, not from grief, but from moments of awe and aloneness. Meditation peeled back her emotional layers. She relived childhood pain, shame, and unmet needs. Yet she also uncovered resilience, creativity, and compassion she'd never met before. Single life allowed her to be in pure presence without defense, without compromise, without distraction. Soon enough, she volunteered at a community shelter, started teaching yoga to seniors, and began writing poetry. Her passion, once buried under others' narratives, came alive again. She wasn't rebuilding a relationship. She was rebuilding her soul. Through this quiet work, Mona found purpose, not because she replaced love with activity, but because she replaced chaos with consciousness. Her tears became blessings, not of loss, but of spiritual unfolds. Reason number 5. Seeking depth, not distraction. In today's swipe-right culture, it's easier than ever to distract loneliness with surface connections, a drink, an app, a weekend fling. But many women now choose depth over distraction, and that means staying single until real presence meets real presence. Sophie, 32, found herself in endless cycles of short-term romances. Each time someone complimented her appearance, filled her evenings, or promised the world, she'd sigh and go home alone, hungry for something more. She decided to pause, to sit with that hunger, to say no, and mean it. So she traveled, read literature, took long walks in nature. She cried not from loneliness but heartbreak over shallow love that never had a soul. She realized her true pace was measured in depth, not dates. Her real self didn't fit in 140 characters or in a 5-line bio. She wanted connection that challenged her to grow, not appease her loneliness. This is why you'll find fewer selfies on her feed, but deeper reflections in her heart. Less noise, but more soul. She stayed single not because love wasn't available, but because it wasn't worth less than presence. Reason number 6. Rewriting life narratives. For some women, choosing to stay single isn't just personal, it's revolutionary. In families where legacy is defined by marriage and children, refusing to follow that script is an act of generational rewriting. Layla, 60, grew up in a traditional household. She was expected to marry early, have kids, sacrifice career, but she followed her dreams and became a renowned painter. She traveled, She transformed her loneliness into art. Her gallery openings became witness to the beauty of hers. Her tears were not about missing a partner. They were for the aunts, cousins, and sisters who felt they had no choice. Each instinctive sob was a reminder. Life can be lived differently. Layla mothered through her art, showed through her independence, loved through her presence. Her singlehood stands as testament. You can love life in your own form, and that love matters too. Reason number 7. No longer willing to settle for conditional love. At some point, every woman who chooses to walk alone comes face to face with a sobering realization. She's tired of conditional love. Love that asks her to shrink, to wait, to sacrifice her joy to maintain someone else's peace. Chloe, 47, had been in 2 long-term relationships. Both times, love came wrapped in expectations. Wear less makeup, laugh a little softer, don't be too ambitious. In both cases, affection was offered like a reward. If she played small enough to be palatable, she tried. She tried for years. Until one morning, she looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. The brightness in her eyes had dulled. Her laugh was more a whisper than a song. She whispered to herself, "I'm done bargaining for love." That was the moment she changed her life, not with drama or declarations, but with silence and resolve. She didn't want another love that came with conditions or emotional gatekeeping. So she began to build a life where she could show up fully, without permission. She moved into a small apartment filled with plants and sunlight. She signed up for improv classes. She laughed again, not to please, but because something inside her sparkled. Chloe is one of countless women who reached the tipping point of no longer willing to trade authenticity for companionship. They didn't stop believing in love. They stopped tolerating the kind that required masks. When asked if she's lonely, Chloe says, "I've never felt more seen by myself." This is why some women stay single, because they're waiting, not passively but powerfully, for something sacred, a love that sees them, not shapes them, and until then, they're no longer afraid to walk the path alone, because at least here, their soul isn't compromised. Reason number 8, finding wholeness in creative freedom. Some women stay single not because they fear love, but because they are deeply in love with creating. Zoya, 35, is a filmmaker. For years, she tried to juggle relationships alongside her creative pursuits. But every time she fell in love, her energy shifted from camera angles and storyboards to managing someone's emotions. The muse that whispered ideas to her began to fall silent. She realized something quietly tragic. Her art began to suffer in the shadow of caretaking, so she chose something radical, to center her creativity instead of romance. She turned off the dating apps, declined setup offers, and committed to something deeper than desire. Her calling. Each morning, she'd write. Each evening, she'd edit. Some nights were lonely, yes, but never hollow. She was crafting worlds, telling stories, shaping memory. Her solitude became sacred ground for expression. It wasn't that she didn't want companionship. It's that her relationship with creativity became too intimate to dilute. She started attending film festivals, creating short documentaries about women living boldly, and mentoring young girls who saw in her what they hadn't seen before, a woman choosing art over approval. In choosing the single life, Zoya didn't close her heart. She opened it wider. Wider to stories, wider to creation, wider to a life that didn't require translation. For many women like her, being single is not a pause. It's a full, rich, and vibrant commitment to becoming the author of their own lives. They don't need saving. They are too busy building something worth being remembered. What if instead of asking why a woman is still single, we asked, what kind of strength did it take to walk this road alone? The world often praises romantic courage, sacrificing for a spouse, raising children, building a home together. And yes, those things are deeply worthy. But why do we not equally honor the courage of the woman who raises herself? Who faces Sunday? Evenings with quiet, not chaos? Who hears her biological clock and still chooses stillness over rushed connection? We call her incomplete. But perhaps it is we who are afraid of her completeness. Because the truth is, these women are not missing love. They are making space for the kind of love that does not burn them out. A love that doesn't silence their voice, consume their light, or erase their essence. They are rewriting the script. And that script sounds like this. I do not need to be chosen to matter. I do not need someone else's timeline to validate my path. My solitude is not a punishment. It's a promise to myself. These are the women who cry in private but rise in public, who soften in silence and still speak truth in rooms that never expected them. They are not broken. They are just no longer willing to be bent into someone else's version of womanhood. And yes, they have grief. But it is a clean grief. Grief that comes not from betrayal or compromise, but from witnessing the world misinterpret their strength. They don't cry because they are unloved. They cry because they have finally chosen to love themselves without interruption. If you are watching this and you are one of them, one of the quiet warriors, the gentle rebels, the poets of solitude, know this. You are not invisible. You are a revolution in progress, and if you're someone who still believes a woman needs a man to be whole, look closer. Listen longer. Her story is not missing pages. It's written in a language you may not have learned yet. The language of liberation. In a world that still measures a woman's worth by her ring or surname, choosing singlehood can be an act of profound spiritual defiance. And in that defiance, these women are not just living, they are lighting the way. So let us honor the path of the solitary heart. Let us recognize the sacredness in choosing peace over performance. And let us never again look at a single woman and ask what is lacking. Instead, let's ask, what has she chosen instead? What has she saved herself from? What has she built that no one else could have built for her? Because sometimes, the most extraordinary kind of love is the one that says, I belong to myself first, and that is more than enough.